True leadership begins when you unlock the brilliance of the mind and lead with the resonance of the heart. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Uncaged Leaders. So we're going to be talking today with my good friend Juan Endara. My name's Mariquita Solis, the Uncaged Heart Coach and the co-founder of The Last First Date. So let me tell you a little bit about Juan. Juan is a project manager and advocate for justice, compassion, and ethical responsibility. He believes that true strength is demonstrated not through dominance, but through integrity, empathy, and the willingness to stand up for the vulnerable. Juan is passionate about encouraging thoughtful conversations around morality, accountability, and our obligations to one another, to animals, and to the world we share. So thanks for joining me today, Juan.
Thank you for having me again. It's great to be back.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. And so there's a lot of, in the world today, we see a lot of maybe possibly domination, we could call it, oppression of the vulnerable, of beings that are weaker, human beings, animals, even Mother Nature. And a lot of times people equate that to proving that you're a man. This hyper masculinity is sometimes it's called. So it depends on how you, how you want to phrase it or how you look at it, what masculinity means. It can mean so many different things to people. So I'd love to hear, because I think of you as a man who is very masculine, and I mean a man with integrity, because that's what it means to me, a man with integrity, standing up for the vulnerable, who has a good character, strong character, and morals. So what does being a man mean to you?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I believe that, through the course of time, definitions and roles have played a part in who we are, who we believe we should be. And that's, a lot of it is cultural. Depending on where you are in the world, or depending on what time in the world you are. If we're talking 50 years ago versus today, I think a lot of change has happened over the decades, for the good. However, I do agree with you that there's a subculture that is promoting and preaching masculinity and what it means to be a man and all that kind of stuff. And we need to counter back on that narrative, because a lot of young minds are being influenced by these so-called influencers who are telling them what it means to be a man. And to answer the question, what it means to be a man, I don't know that there's an answer to that. I mean, there's physiology involved, what it means to be a man, but somebody that protects the vulnerable and uses their strength not to oppress, but to liberate, doesn't have to be a man. A woman could do the same. Does that make the woman manly? No, it doesn't. So I think it makes us human to do that, to be able to use our strength, our intelligence, our privilege to help and protect others from those who oppress others. And oppression does stem a lot from the patriarchy and from masculinity, but women oppress as well. I think that because men are seen as, stronger and more dominant, they rise to the top in political circles, or, they take advantage of that idea that, strong men lead. And so that's why we see a lot of men who are leaders and not a lot of women. But I think that should change, and I think that is changing. Because to lead requires not strength, physical strength, but to lead requires, a strong mind, a strong ethics, strong morals is what I think. So I think, a man or a woman could do that.
Yeah, I agree with you, definitely. And yes, I know we talked previously about gender roles and not wanting. I don't want to be trapped in a box, and and then that could be odd to some people, but I feel like you're on board with that kind of same way of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we constantly are putting ourselves and others in boxes, and that's what divides us. Like I said earlier, men and women are different. We're not the same. That's for sure. We have different chemistry, different, attributes, different strengths, I guess. But that shouldn't put us in a box, and this shouldn't define who we are, because you can find examples of people who don't fit in those boxes, and that's okay. There are strong women out there, and there are weak men, and that's okay. It's character traits. As long as you, live with integrity and not exploiting and oppressing others, who cares how people label you? It doesn't matter if you're seen as a weak man because of the way you dress or because of your physique. It doesn't matter. What matters is what's up here and how you use that to live your life and how to use that to help others.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. So, can you tell me about your how you grew up as a child? Did you grow up with a lot of strong male role models with integrity? Did you see? I mean that. I guess I mean the bullying of young boys who would be called sissy for doing things that were equated to feminism.
Yeah. So I was fortunate. I think I had a really healthy childhood. I was brought up by two loving parents. And of course, they come from an older generation. So they had, they had grown up themselves in a certain society that was defined by gender roles. The man worked, the woman was a stay-at-home wife and cooked and cleaned and took care of the kids. And that's how I grew up. That's the way it was back in the day. So the woman didn't have the freedom to pursue her own desires and goals in those times. And of course, there are women that fought in those times to be able to escape those gender roles and those societal kind of norms. But in spite of all that, my mom was very loving and caring. She was a stay-at-home wife who cooked and cleaned and took care of the family. My dad worked 2 to 3 jobs sometimes at a time to provide financially for the family. But they instilled with me, very good values and morals, that people should be respected, that we should not judge others based on, how they look or anything like that. And so I grew up, I think as a child, I always, wanted to help and fight for those who maybe couldn't or didn't know how. So as a child, I did see bullying in school, like every child sees. I personally wasn't bullied, maybe because I was kind of bigger and stronger. But when anybody would make fun of, let's say, an overweight child or a weak boy who couldn't throw the ball, if they were made fun of, I would step in and I would try to say that that's wrong, that we shouldn't be doing that. So I think from an early childhood, I was always on the side of being fair and just to others, because we all have, like I said, we all have different strengths and limitations, and just because somebody is physically weaker doesn't mean that they should be bullied. It's not fair, it's not right, and the bully wouldn't like it if they were in that situation. And it's a matter of respect. We should be respecting everybody, and it starts with ourselves. We need to respect ourselves. A lot of bullying comes from insecurities, or because of what they see their parents do. Their parents are bullies, how they're brought up. But I think deep down, every person is good. It's just what they're taught or what they fear. And so they project it on others to make themselves feel better. And they don't know, I don't think they realize the impact and the damage and the harm that they cause simply with their words. It doesn't even have to be physically bullying. It could be just verbally bullying, and it's wrong and it needs to stop. And we need to teach and educate our young that it's not okay to do that.
You're absolutely right. Because then it just continues on that cycle of this behavior that is so harmful and damaging. And and until we break those loops, it hurts everyone because we're all interconnected. No one is excluded from that. So, yeah. So when you're talking about that this true strength is shown through integrity, right, rather than domination. So how can men begin to separate their sense of strength from the traditional pressure to dominate, since so many men really do believe that they have to be tough, they can't cry, or they can't show emotion, or they can't show caring? What would you say to those men?
Yeah. I think that those are human traits and emotions. They don't necessarily belong to only women, to show emotion, to cry, to feel vulnerable. That's a human trait. If aliens visited us, they would see that in all of us. Some of us choose to hide it, and hiding it makes you weak. So, don't hide it. Be who you are. Express your emotions, without harming others, of course. And I think that if men were to liberate themselves from that idea that I can't do this because it would make me weak or not manly, well, what happens is that when you suppress those emotions, you act out in other ways. You become violent and physical. And that's not strength, that's weakness. That means that you can't control your emotions, so you act out. And if you can't control something, I think that makes you weak, when you can't control something within. So to be able to recognize that it doesn't matter to me how the world sees me, I'm going to be who I am, and that is strength. That is self-confidence. And I think that's what needs to be taught and told to those people, that stop worrying about what others think and just liberate yourself from these societal norms.
Yes, because a lot of people are living for society, and that means these facades. We're walking around not showing our authentic self or having compassion for others because we're afraid that we'll be made fun of. Or, as an empath, hearing like you're too sensitive, I'm being told that, right? And my sensitivity is my greatest strength. I'm not going to turn that off. So it helps me be able to connect with others and to have good relationships, mm-hmm. and to be morally conscious in this world. So in your work as a project manager, how do you model leadership that prioritizes empathy and compassion without losing your authority?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the corporate world, it's very different. There is a lot of respect. There is no bullying going on because you'll lose your job. And honestly, everybody is well educated, at least in the field that I'm in, and everybody has a level of empathy because they understand their position and their insecurities about certain things, and they don't want to make others feel bad or less than. Really, in that world, we're all kind of equal, regardless of gender, regardless of our physique, regardless of anything, even our intelligence or our skills or capabilities. We still see each other as equal because we understand that every person came from, somewhere, or their life, where they are now is a result of, many things in their life, including their education. So we actually try to support and help each other because we are thinking about the end goal. So if I'm working on a project, my goal is for the project to be successful. And in order for the project to be successful, everybody on the team needs to be successful. So if somebody is not being successful, I'm not going to put them down. I'm going to help them the best way that I can, and vice versa. People help me all the time. So I think that, in that world, at least in my world, that's how it is. In other areas, maybe it's different.
Yeah, but we have to do that. We have to help those. We have to help those that need help. And we have to see that help is not a weakness. It's okay to ask for help, because we're living in a culture that glorifies this hyper independence.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to young men who are saying in their 20s and 30s, and it's the same as young women also, like, I don't need a man, I don't need a woman. I mean, and what would you say to that culture?
I would say that, you have to think strategically. If you want to be a tennis player, you should probably get a coach, and a coach is helping you. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you smart. Like, if you want to be the best in something, you should seek guidance, because you're not born with these skills and talents. Others have acquired these skills, and they can coach you and teach you and make you better. So that applies to any aspect of life, not just tennis. That's just an example. So seeking help means that you're smart, means that you are trying to better yourself and to improve so that you can become better, and so that you can also learn how to help others. So, for example, I play poker, and I hired a coach, and that coach has helped me tremendously. But I've also acquired the skills to coach others and to help others become better players. So yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong. In fact, it's encouraged and it's smart to seek guidance and help.
Definitely. I mean, because if we don't, we stop growth. I mean, if we're not always growing, if we're not acknowledging that we can grow and looking for help, I mean, asking someone to guide us or help us, however you want to say it, right? That's part of being human. We needed help from the moment we were born, because if we didn't receive help, we wouldn't be here. So, yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. And when you were talking about choosing integrity, what's the hardest part about that, when the culture is still rewarding the old performance of dominance?
Yeah, I think that humanity needs to look within. And I think integrity means that you live in accordance with your true self, and you are true to yourself, and you don't worry about anything else, any external judgments from others. You just live according to what you believe is correct. And so that's what's helped me to become certain things in my life that I didn't used to be. I used to exploit animals, and then one day I learned that that's not true to who I am. I love animals. I believe in justice, and I believe that what humanity does to them is unjust because it's not necessary. So when I came to that realization, it wasn't even a choice. It was like, if I'm going to live true to who I am, then I need to stop participating in these systems. So I did. But it requires a level of awareness. If you're not aware, you can't change. Change comes from awareness and from accountability. And a lot of people resist change, and they don't like to be held accountable, and they don't like to hold themselves accountable, because it's so much easier not to. Because the rest of the world, or their circle of friends or family or social structure, has a certain expectation of them, and they want to be liked, and they want to fit in that circle. And if they don't, they're going to be outcasted, and that's scary. But what's more important, to be true or to be fake, and to be accepted for somebody that you're not,
Yeah, and how does somebody put up with that? I mean, the shaming, maybe, if you're standing up for your beliefs, if you're defending, let's just say, like you're saying, animals, if you're defending the environment, or saying, hey, don't hurt those coyotes, and people are attacking you or shaming you into that. I mean, what's the best thing you would say to a child maybe that's watching, a young man who's defending animals and getting shamed for it? Like, why do you care so much about those animals, or why do you care about those coyotes? You shouldn't worry about them, and what would you say to that young man?
I would say what I say to everyone, that in this world, to stand up and fight for others and is, unfortunately, it's considered brave. But, you know, I would encourage that young man to continue to be brave and to, you know, shut the noise out, because anybody that shames you for standing up for justice, that tells you a lot about that person, not about you. So don't listen to or be influenced by those people who are shaming you, because they're showing their true colors of who they are, and they need help, not you. So there's no shame in protecting and fighting for others. The opposite is true. Those who oppress, it's shameful to oppress others, you know. But in our society, we're like a minority, and so it's easy for bullies to bully and for people to shame, because again, it comes from a place of projection and insecurities. I'm going to shame you because I feel shame for what I'm doing, but if I shame you, then, you know, I feel better. And a lot of times when those conversations happen, the person being shamed has to defend themselves for why they're doing what they're doing, which takes away from the conversation of why they're doing it. So instead of defending myself for being, you know, if somebody says to me, you know, why are you an activist? Why do you protect animals? I tell them, you know what, that's not really relevant. I'm not really interested in telling you why I do this. What I'm interested in is, why do you oppress them? Why won't you stop doing that? Oh, but there are other, you know, injustices in the world. What about the people in, you know, across the world who are being oppressed? Okay, once again, that's deflection. You're trying to talk about something that you're not responsible for. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about, you know, your actions and your participation in oppressing others. Why do you choose to do that when you don't have to? And so we have to understand that we cannot fall trap into their deflections, because then we start talking about things that don't matter. Like, you know, why I choose to fight for animals, it's not relevant to the conversation. I don't need to answer that. It's not going to get us anywhere. That's not why I'm here. So it's important to stick to the topic at hand, to call out their deflections, and to help them understand that they are not living in alignment with their own values with regards to any injustice or any oppression. That's the main goal, I think.
Yeah, and I've seen you stand up for your beliefs, stand up for other beings, and I've seen the way you're very calm and you're able to have a conversation that's based in integrity and dignified, which is something that is rare, because a lot of people struggle with having conversations about their passion, something they're passionate and they're standing up for, they get triggered. So how have you been able to get to this place where you're able to keep a cool, calm head and not get sidetracked when people try to deflect and throw you off course, or try to make fun of you, or try to trigger you? How are you able to maintain that sense of integrity?
For the most part, yes. I'm also human, so yeah, I falter sometimes. But the way that I handle it is that I'm always looking at the end goal. Like, what is my purpose? If I'm going to be triggered, and if I'm going to get defensive, and if I'm going to do all that, then I'm not accomplishing the goal. I'm wasting my time and energy. So I think that psychologically, I understand that, you know, people have these core, they believe they have these core beliefs. And when those are challenged, they get very defensive, and they take out that defensiveness on the person bringing that to their attention. So if I allow that person to trigger me, then I'm not helping that person. So it's important that the reason I'm doing this is not to be right and not to feel good, you know, give myself a pat on the back and know that, yeah, I'm right and you're wrong. And it's not about that. The reason that I'm doing this is to help you, because the end goal is to help, in this case, in my situation as an animal rights activist, is to help the animals. If I can help you, then I am helping the animals. If I am not helping you by being triggered and defensive, then I'm not helping the animals, and therefore I'm wasting my time and energy. So I'm thinking strategically, how can I not allow your words to affect me personally? And how can I continue to try to help you, even though you're attacking me, when they actually believe we're attacking them? We're just trying to help them come to a realization that they may not have come to before. And so they feel that as an attack, and then they start attacking us. But because I know that it's just basic human behavior to kind of react that way, my job is to let that kind of filter through me and not affect me, and then stay on point and continue to help. And I've seen it happen in front of my eyes where people come at me very defensive, and I don't let that affect me. And they start to see that I'm genuinely there with a purpose and a goal. And I'm not there to judge. I'm not there to shame. I'm not there to do anything but to help them hold themselves accountable. And so when they realize that, their tone, their demeanor changes, it shifts to being more open to understanding and listening. Because I'm not there to debate or to fight. I'm there to bring a message and to hold people accountable. And, you know, it seems to work for me. So being calm is important, because as soon as you're not calm, that gives them an opportunity to blame you for your activism, for how you're, oh, well, you're not going to reach people with that attitude, you know, or I'm not going to listen to you because of this, that, or the other. So it's important to stay calm and to stay message focused, because once they see that, they'll see, oh, there's nothing that I can say or do to trigger this person. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to trigger us to avoid being held accountable. So it's important to not fall trap to that.
Right. Yes. To have a foundation of strength, and to remember the end goal, why you're there, and to also be prepared for that, knowing that when we go out and we speak our truths, whatever they are, whether it's for animals, the planet, for, you know, human rights, we have to know that people are going to come at us, and how are we going to handle it? So to be able to have those conversations ahead of time in our head, I mean, to know, well, what's going to happen when someone might attack me. And this is also about relating in personal relationships. We have to have a calm sense of integrity also. I mean, integrity and strength, and not get triggered, or we're not going to be able to have relationships, and I mean, that are healthy, right? A lot of us get defensive. And so can you kind of talk about that? Why this is the same patterns that we want in our own relationships as in activists and as in activism?
Sure. I think that in life, there's going to be conflict and disagreements. And if you act surprised every time something happens like that, then you did not prepare for it. You have to live a life where these things are expected. As an activist, I expect that somebody's going to attack me. I expect that somebody's going to try to belittle me. I expect that they're going to do these things. So I'm prepared for that. If I'm not prepared for that, then I'm going to react emotionally. But if I'm prepared for it, I can react logically and strategically. And same goes with relationships. And again, I am human, so I'm not perfect. I falter at times, and we do have emotions sometimes. We do get defensive, but it comes from a place of like not understanding or miscommunication, or creating stories in our head that aren't true, and not giving the other person the benefit of the doubt to understand them, or maybe that other person also needs to work on themselves and how to communicate. And so when two people are trying to communicate and things starts getting elevated, sometimes we don't see that because we're in it. So we have to just try harder. We have to keep working on ourselves. We can't change someone else. We can't fix someone else. We can only change and fix ourselves. And if we do that, then we become better, stronger people and better communicators, and better at resolving and handling conflicts, which are inevitable. They're gonna happen. It's how you handle them that matters.
Right. Yes. And I recently joined up with my colleague Glenda Tilson, and we founded the Last First Date. Now it's an introduction. I mean, it is to introduce people, but it's not a swipe a swiping thing, right? This is on morals and integrity. It's to reflect on your own patterns and what a healthy relationship requires. And there's so many people that get involved in relationships, and I am one of them, that would just immediately jump in without thinking about morals, character, integrity, and the things that really matter. And that is why we started the Last First Date, to really try to help people create this a lasting relationship, but looking at themselves first and the blind spots, right, that they could take into a relationship. So what would you say to someone is, what are the foundations of a healthy relationship? Somebody that's watching, maybe a young man that might say, well, there's not any good women out there. Women just want me for my assets, for my car, for my bank account, my house. And I'm done with this thing. What would you say to, and what would you say is, what are the values of a healthy relationship, and where are young men getting trapped where they're misstepping these days?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the foundations are, for a healthy relationship, require aligned values. When it comes to either spiritual, morals, everybody is capable of change, and I know that because I changed myself. I mean, I didn't change per se who I am. I just began to live in alignment with who I was. That's the key. So, for example, if I wasn't in a relationship and I met somebody that was exploiting animals, I wouldn't immediately dismiss them, although I know that some in the movement wouldn't even go that route, but I wouldn't immediately dismiss them because I believe that they have the values. They just need to live in accordance with those values. Now, if they choose not to, then that tells me something about the person. They don't have integrity. Because you cannot say one thing, claim to have certain values, and then do the exact opposite of that. That's not integrity. And I could not personally be with somebody that lacks integrity. But if that person doesn't know, isn't aware, then they are capable of change, through awareness. So it's important to make sure that the values are there and aligned, even if the actions are not, because those actions could change through awareness. So I think that's the most important thing, is that, and also, what do you project out into the world? There's nothing wrong with having a fancy car, but if that's part of your identity, then you're going to attract women who are interested in materialistic things. And if that's not what you're looking for, maybe don't project that, or maybe have that, but be humble about it. Don't act like, look at me, I'm so, whatever. Our egos need to be in check. We need to keep our egos in check, because it's nice to have nice things, but if you want those nice things just so others can envy you, then I think you're having them for the wrong reasons.
Right. And then people are picked because of that. And then you're chosen because of that, if that's what you're showing to people. Yeah. So I hear a lot of men talking about always having to be the provider, always having to be the strong one, and never getting a break, 24/7, having to be that stoic man that never can falter and never cry. I mean, what would you say to men that have told me, no, there's no way I can stop doing that. That's my role. And unfortunately, I wish I could, but I can't take a break from that. What would you say to those men?
Well, I would say that we're living in different times. We're not cavemen anymore. I understand that, a couple thousand years ago, because men are physically bigger and physically stronger, generally speaking, then it was the man's role to provide for his family, because he's the one that had to go out and hunt, or he's the one with the strength that could do that. We're not living in those times anymore. So what do you mean provide? Women can provide. What does that mean? It doesn't mean having a job and making an income. There's plenty of women who make a lot more money than me. And at the end of the day, you kind of need to provide for yourself. I mean, if you have a family, then it's a joint effort, you know? And again, there's nothing wrong with a woman choosing to take care of the family and the home, in my opinion, if that's their choice. But for society to impose that on somebody and for your expectations to be, this is who I'm supposed to be, I don't agree with that. But if somebody chooses, because the roles could be reversed. There's plenty of situations where a woman has a professional career, makes a lot of money, and the man, you know, maybe is an artist and works at home and is able to take care of the family and the kids. What does that mean? Does that mean that the woman wears the pants in the family and that the man is weak and he's being, you know, the woman is providing and that makes him less of a man? That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, unfortunately, society may see that that man is weak and may see, but that's coming from insecurities. I, as a man, can't allow for a woman to provide for me because that would not make me manly. So I'm insecure. But if you're secure in who you are, then it doesn't matter what the rest of the world says. You're living your life the way you choose to live it. As long as you don't participate in exploiting or harming others, who's to say how you should live your life? Nobody. It doesn't matter what others say. It really doesn't. Who cares? I don't want others to approve of me because I'm so anti-societal norms that I'd rather people not approve of the way that I choose to live my life, because that means I'm doing something right.
Yes, and I feel like our moral compass has really plummeted lately. So it's a struggle at night sometimes to sleep because I feel like we've really lost connection with each other, and we're blaming each other, and we're not taking responsibility for our actions. Well, I mean, taking responsibility, what does that look like if you've wronged someone and you're afraid to come back? If there's someone watching, you know, a man that's afraid to apologize or take responsibility, what does that look like? I mean, would you speak to that, man?
I think that it comes down to, you know, putting aside your ego, because I think men who have a difficulty time apologizing, it comes from ego. And, you know, just put that to the side. You will liberate yourself as soon as you do that. You will be able to do whatever you want. You'll be able to apologize without having a feeling of like, oh, I'm a man or whatever. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that it's important to, you know, I remain hopeful. I know that you're saying that we're living in a world where all of these things are happening, but I think that's been happening for a long time. It's not new. In fact, I believe that we're moving in a better direction. Because like I said, 30, 40, 50 years ago, these roles were very instilled in us and very defined. Women couldn't even vote several decades ago. And they had certain roles that they had to abide by, and they had to, you know, they existed for their husbands. But that's not the world that we live in anymore. I mean, there's still people that believe that, you know, antiquated kind of belief systems, but I think through connectivity, through social media, people are moving away from those societal norms because they're starting to see that that's not the way it is or should be.
Well, good. I'm glad you're seeing it differently. I'm going to see it like you do. And you're right, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting on this live stream doing this if times hadn't changed. Definitely.
Yeah, it's still happening, and it's, you know, and there's a movement that's trying to push this ideology or these beliefs, and you know, I think that we do need to put a stop to it, because again, like the Andrew Tates of the world, who have millions of followers, young men who look up to these men, and the things that he spouts is just so oppressive, so wrong, so misogynistic, and it sends the wrong message. And if those children or young adults get fed this information, there's basically brainwashing. It's brainwashing them to believe that they're supposed to live a certain way. They're supposed to treat women a certain way, that they are they are they're the ones that are strong, and women should, be a certain way towards them. And it's just all ridiculous. So there's got to be, if that movement is happening, there's got to be a counter movement. There's got to be a movement that pushes back on that narrative.
Yes, because it is very frightening to see young women be happily, or I don't know if it's happily, but appear to go along with this of being objects, being treated like objects for those men like Andrew Tate. And when I saw that inside the manosphere, it was very disturbing, and to hear those young men say that they already had they had something against them already, being a young man, where women, they are able to use their sexuality and everything to really move up in society. But they had that idea that they were more oppressed. What would you say about that? Did you see that movie, the documentary?
I did not get a chance to see it. So who is saying that they're more oppressed? Sorry.
Well, some young men, I think they were probably in there, maybe 18 to 20, saying that, being a man, that they have, and I think that's what they're teaching young men, that you are coming up against more, that the young women have it easier, basically.
Oh yeah, wow. Okay, that's definitely not true. Women have been abused by men since the beginning of time. And of course, there's abusive women out there as well. But because men are bigger and stronger and have power, they use that power, to oppress others, to abuse others. And again, women can also do that. But history has shown that for the most part, men have been the abusers and the oppressors. There's a lot of indoctrination that's happened and that is continuing to happen, and we need to fight it. Even so-called good people who believe in faith and religion and certain things, and what the Bible says, for example, that the woman is supposed to, be submissive to her. That's indoctrination. The Bible is a book written by man, and it's so heavily pushed on society from a young age. You don't know anything else to believe because that's what you were taught since you were young. And so these women that I hear on the internet saying that, yes, I need to be submissive to my man, they truly believe that, but they believe that because they've been brainwashed to believe that. They are not free. They are not free to be who they are because they're afraid of the consequences. They're afraid that, if they stop believing, they will not enter heaven, or they will be outcasted by their family and their circle of influence. If everybody around you believes something, then you want to believe that too, because otherwise you won't fit in. And we are social creatures. We want to fit in. We want to belong. And we don't want to be outcasts. And so we'll do whatever it takes.
That's very true. And someone, I don't remember who it was, said that one reason the women go along with it is because they feel, for protection, it's better to be with the dominators than to be over here, which is frightening, I guess, fighting the dominators, against the dominators. So it's better to be used than to be in the other camp.
Yeah, because they don't know anything else, and they would, it's scarier to be in a silo by yourself and not knowing how to exist. But the way you were brought up and everybody around you is living a certain way, it's just so much easier to accept the abuse, right? I think.
Right, definitely. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around the abuse that goes on in fraternities and the hazing, and where I've seen people that I know laughing about it. But yet the people that I know laugh about it as a consequence have not acknowledged pain that I have, because they shut down. If you can shut down your emotions to hazing and abusive behaviors to other members of your fraternity, then you can shut it down to your friends, family, whoever, right? Anyone, to animals, the planet. And the shutting down of emotions is killing us. It's killing the planet. It's killing human beings. It's killing animals. We all suffer. And I don't know if you see that a lot with people doing that. And it's even in the corporate world, the shutting down of emotions, where it's not okay to show emotions in the corporate world.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. You always need to stay professional and keep your emotions in check. So, for example, if I feel anger towards somebody because they didn't do something right, well, I can't show that anger because it's not productive. So I have to use that anger in a different way. So that's one example. But like, yeah, you don't cry in the professional, field, and you don't show emotion. It's true, but I think it's because the emotions need to be used in a productive way. So,
Right.
But I guess, that translates to life as well. Like, it's not about not having emotion. It's about what to do with that emotion. Like, I can have anger, but if I punch a wall, I accomplish nothing. I was not in control of my emotions, and it wasn't productive. But if I have anger and I strategize on how to handle the situation that I'm angry about, then I can resolve the issue. Maybe,
Well, it was what you talked about before, having being in control of your emotions, being able to, and not in control where the emotions control you, but you are able to feel, see the emotions, and you're not going to just, just throw anger out at everyone, but you're going to be able to, instead of react, but to respond.
Right. And I think that's the key there. And, I'm 53 years old. I've learned a lot through life. And emotions are powerful. And if they control you, you lose. You lose. You need to be in control of your emotions. So when somebody says, you made me angry, no, I cannot make somebody angry because I don't have control of their emotions. They allowed that anger to control them. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, I don't see that others can control my emotions. I mean, they might do things and I might feel something, but I can't blame them for my actions or for my reactions because I am in control of my emotions, not them. No matter what they do, no matter what they say, I cannot blame somebody else for how I feel or how I react. That's totally 100% on me. And once I learned that, and once I understood that, I live at peace now. I hardly get angry. I hardly allow others to push my buttons or again, I still am human. I still feel emotions. I still feel sadness. I still feel anger sometimes. I still feel, all the emotions that we feel. But how I choose to handle those emotions, I think, is what matters.
Yes, amen to that. So let me ask you this. Why is a willingness to stand up for the vulnerable an essential part of a man's own emotional liberation?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. Why is a willingness to stand up for the vulnerable an essential part of a man's own emotional liberation?
Mm-hmm. I think that, I see it kind of as a duty to stand up for the vulnerable, because I feel that, if I was the vulnerable, I would want somebody standing up for me if I couldn't stand up for myself, or or if I needed help standing up for myself. So, that's why to be able to empathize and to understand what others are going through, then it falls back on me as, okay, what am I doing about it? How can I make this a better world in my little existence? I'm one person out of 8 billion, but I have power, I have strength, I have influence. I need to use that for good. And so that's liberating to me, because I'm no longer interested in things that I used to be interested in, like material things or things that don't matter. And now, because I feel that I'm doing something righteous and good, then I feel that I have fulfilled my true self. Even if I haven't accomplished what I'm working towards accomplishing, I'm a small part of something that will eventually happen. And that is true liberation for all beings. And, but, I can't change the world by myself, but I can be a part of that change. And I know that I'll go to my grave knowing that I did a net positive in this world, I think. And I think if we all did that, we would be living in a beautiful world, And unfortunately, people are easily influenced, and easily indoctrinated. So because that's true, I feel that, if we push back and fight, then we can influence, because people are easily influenced. So if they are, why can't I influence them counter to what they're being influenced by a society? And I can, and I have. I've seen change in front of me happen. And it's liberating to know that I had an impact on others.
Yeah, you're having a big impact on others, because I could feel the energy of integrity when I first saw you on a video in social media. So yeah, and then we connected and talked before, and that's why I thought, yeah, I've got to have Juan share his knowledge about how to live as a healthy human being. Not just a man, but an example of true integrity in a human being. So yeah, so for men, since this is a men's show, but we do cover a lot here, we talk about women as well. But what's a step, as we're coming to the end of our time, what is one step a man can take today to align his daily habits with ethical responsibility and respect for the world that we share?
What was the first part of that again? I'm sorry.
What is one step a man can take today to align his daily habits with ethical responsibility and respect for the world we share?
I think the first step is to look within, look in the mirror, and ask yourself, who are you? And who do you want to be? And are your daily actions supporting that or not? And if they're not, why not? And if they're not, can you start living from that point forward in a way that is supportive of who you truly are deep down inside, not who the world sees you as or who you want the world to see you as? That's not important. You need to ask yourself deep down, who am I? And am I living, are my actions in support of who I claim to be to myself, not to the world? Because everybody puts up a facade. Everybody wants the world to see them a certain way, but that doesn't necessarily define who you are and who you truly are. So stop worrying about how others see you. Maybe worry about how you see yourself at a deeper level, and start living in alignment with that.
Yeah.
I think naturally you will come to the conclusion that I need to use my strength, intelligence, and privilege to help others. And not only to help others, but to not oppress others, to not bully others, to not support that idea that it's okay to bully others or or oppress others.
Yeah. And so what about your legacy? What would you like people to say when you're many years gone from this planet about you?
I think that I would want others to see and know that change is possible. I think I used to be a very different person. I used to react a lot out of emotion, and I learned that that came from a place of fear and insecurities. And my life was spiraling at one point because I didn't know how to manage or handle emotions because of things that happen in life, breakups or family matters and issues and betrayal and hurt. And so it's natural to feel these things, you know, but it's not okay to react and to do things that are counterproductive and, you know, to your psyche and to yourself. So I think the legacy is, you know, work on yourself, recognize that change is possible, and I'm a living example of that. So I used to, the biggest thing that I used to do that I was not consciously aware of is that I used to exploit animals for food, clothing, and any other reason, just like the rest of the world. When I came to the realization that that didn't align with my true self and that I could live a different way with not exploiting animals, then I had to ask myself, am I actually a person of integrity? Because I believe that I am. But if I don't live in alignment with what I say, then I'm not a person of integrity. And that just didn't sit right with me. Like, how can I continue living a lie? So I changed my actions to align with my values, and I stopped exploiting animals. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
Well, that's a great legacy to live. The awareness that you can change, that we're not stuck in who we are today, that we can make a change no matter how hard it might be. But you're a living example of that. And that's what we need, living examples. So that's a great legacy.
That's the baseline, right? Like not harming others and not exploiting others, to me, is the baseline. Like I don't get a pat on the back for doing that because that's the way we should live. Like this it's not good.
Right.
It's just. I mean, it's about justice. It's about not exploiting others, not harming others. It doesn't make me a good person. It just makes me decent. But I think my legacy is that I've taken what I've learned. I've aligned my actions with my values, and I've taken it a step further and become a voice for those that don't have a voice, and helping others become a strong voice, you know, for others. So like kind of like taking what I've learned, understanding how to have effective communication with others, effective outreach, and passing that along. I think that would be my legacy, is like helping others be effective in their outreach. Now, I'm still learning, but everything that I've learned, I try to also, you know, help others. I guess coach others, you can say.
Right. Well, you've got a lot of years left to keep creating that legacy. So you'll have to come back on here and let us know how you've done that in the future. So yeah, thanks so much for speaking, Juan. I'm very inspired by your integrity, your compassion, and your courage and this strong persona that you have developed, who is not afraid. You're very courageous and your voice is very strong, and we need that in this world today. So thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you so much, Mariquita. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks, y'all. We will see you next week. Everyone watching and on the replay, let us know. And we need to know where we can find you, Juan.
Oh, okay. The best way is through social media at Vegan Willow, WILO. On Instagram is probably the best way to find me.
All right, y'all. Everyone heard that. So make sure that you go check out, find Juan on social media and stand up strong and use your voice just like he's doing. He's a great example. So y'all, we will see you next week. And thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks. Take care.